Blinkit now controls more than half of India's quick commerce market. That is the headline. More than 50% share in a sector that was supposed to be too competitive, too crowded, and too expensive for anyone to dominate. Now, to be fair, Blinkit was already the market leader in the quick commerce space. But what makes this development remarkable is Blinkit's turnaround story. A few years ago, when it was still called Grofers, the company was on its deathbed. This was the first year of the pandemic. Demand for instant deliveries was exploding, but Grofers did not have the money to join the race. Rivals were raising big rounds and expanding fast. Grofers, meanwhile, was stuck on the sidelines, badly in need of cash. And the lifeline arrived in June 2021. Zomato stepped in with $120 million. Grofers was then rebranded as Blinkit, and soon after, it became a unicorn. A year later, in 2022, Zomato went all the way and acquired Blinkit for a deal worth nearly $600 million. Suddenly, the struggling grocery platform was positioned as Zomato's boldest bet on the future. But the years that followed were not smooth. Blinkit faced brutal competition from Swiggy's Instamart and a fast rising Zepto. It faced strikes from its own delivery partners, and many of its newly opened dark stores were not generating the revenue to pay for themselves. Despite that turbulence, Blinkit kept pushing. It doubled down on the 10-minute promise, it widened its product catalog, and leaned on Zomato's capital and customer base. And now the comeback is complete. Blinkit sits at the top, controlling more than half of the market. The real story now, though, is whether Blinkit's two big bets, an aggressive dark store empire and a risky inventory led model, will sustain its lead or will it weigh it down? Welcome to Daybreak, a business news podcast from the Ken. I'm your host Snigdha Sharma, and I don't chase the news cycle. Instead, every day of the week, my colleague Rachel Varghese and I will come to you with one business story that is worth understanding and worth your time. Today is Thursday, the 25th of September. You see, the success of any quick commerce business depends on two things: its dark stores and the right mix of SKUs or stock keeping units. Dark stores are the invisible engine. Warehouses hidden inside residential areas, stacked with everything from bread to milk to toothpaste and cooking oil, sometimes even luggage and electronics. But Blinkit did not always bet this heavily on dark stores. In fact, one of the first things that happened after Zomato acquired the company in 2022 was a cutback. Blinkit closed underperforming warehouses to improve margins. The focus then was on survival, not expansion. By the end of that year, though, the strategy flipped. Blinkit began aggressively adding stores. Back in 2024, analysts described the company's approach as a land grab. At that time, the top 8 cities accounted for 90% of Blinkit's business, with Delhi NCR alone contributing to over 40% of gross order value and about a third of its total stores. The CEO, Albinder Dhinsa, even suggested on an earnings call that each of India's top 4 or 5 metros could eventually sustain 500 dark stores each. At the time, he admitted that some warehouses may take longer than the average 2 months to break even. But Blinkit had already turned profitable in March 2024. It was proof that the model could work at scale. So, how do these dark stores actually function? You see, Blinkit runs different dark store formats to balance speed and assortment. Its standard stores, about 2,000 to 3,000 square feet, are the backbone, stocking 2,000 to 3,000 SKUs. The larger express stores can be 7 to 8,000 square feet, while the mother warehouses are over 20,000 square feet. This hub and spoke mix lets Blinkit scale quickly while keeping deliveries hyperlocal. Every user is assigned to a polygon, a 5-kilometer radius that contains 3 or 4 stores. So, when an order comes in, the app checks stock in real time and routes it to the nearest option. Sometimes everything is sourced from a single store, and other times the order is split. which can stretch the delivery time to up to 30 minutes. Inside these warehouses, the workflow is engineered for speed because grab items from shelves optimized for fast turnover. They scan them, bag them, and then hand them over to a rider, often all in under 3 minutes. The riders then cover the short distance to the customer. Behind the scenes, the larger mother warehouses on the city's edges keep all of these stores stocked. As of now, Blinkit operates over 1,750 dark stores, far ahead of its rivals. It is aiming for 2,000 by the end of this year, after adding 150 to 200 in just a single quarter. This density is Blinkit's moat. But maintaining nearly 2,000 dark stores is an expensive business. So, to make it pay, Blinkit needs more than just dark stores. It needs margins, which brings us to its newest pivot, the inventory gamble. Stay tuned for more on this. Since the beginning of this month, September 1st, Blinkit made one of the boldest moves in its short history. It shifted to an inventory led model. Until then, Blinkit worked largely as a marketplace. Sellers listed their products, Blinkit facilitated the transaction, and the risk of unsold stock stayed with the supplier. But under the new model, Blinkit buys the goods itself, holds them inside its dark stores, and sells them directly to its customers. On paper, the logic is simple. Owning the stock means Blinkit will have more control over the supply chain. It can negotiate bulk discounts from suppliers, improving margins, and it also allows the company to guarantee better product availability, fewer out of stock moments that frustrate customers. And because inventory is standardized across warehouses, picking and packing can be faster, making Blinkit's 10-minute promise more reliable. There is also an advertising advantage. Brands are more likely to pay for visibility when Blinkit itself controls what's on the shelf. And that means a stronger revenue stream beyond commissions. But this shift also changes Blinkit's DNA itself. The company is no longer just a delivery platform. It is now a retailer, and that comes with new risks. Because every item on those shelves in the dark stores is money already spent. If demand forecasting is off, stock will sit idle. For fresh produce, that means spoilage. For non-grocery categories like electronics or luggage, it means dead stock eating up space in already cramped warehouses. Multiply this risk across nearly 2,000 stores and thousands of SKUs, and the stakes become clear. This is why Zomato has been pumping in capital into Blinkit. In February this year alone, it was 1,500 crore rupees to push the aggressive expansion and also to bankroll this transition and cover the cash intensity of holding this sort of inventory. But it also raises expectations. Shareholders will now want to see proof that margins improve enough to justify this risk. So the gamble now is that owning the shelves will give Blinkit the leverage to match its scale with profitability. The danger is that the very shelves that it now owns could weigh it down. For now, Blinkit's growth story is intact. It dominates the market and its dark stores are firing at full capacity. But quick commerce is a fragile business. The same density that powers speed can magnify mistakes, and Blinkit's future will depend on whether its new role as a retailer and not just as a delivery platform pays off.
Daybreak is produced from the newsroom of The Ken, India's first subscriber-focused business news platform. What you're listening to is just a small sample of our subscriber-only offerings, and a full subscription offers daily, long-form feature stories, newsletters, and a whole bunch of premium podcasts. To subscribe, head to theken.com and click on the red subscribe button on the top of the website. Today's episode was hosted and produced by my colleague Snigdha Sharma and edited by Rajiv CN.